want to come in here as a mommy, having children who, have grief, and also because of the 20 years that I was in WeCare, working with widows and young children, that I think we don't need to be anxious that they must talk. I think it's okay when they don't want to talk, and we don't need to force it out of them. I think that's worse when we force it out of them. I think in the time that I was in WeCare, I always want to empower the mummies to just bond with the children and be aware. Now, if the child is not withdrawn, the child is still happily going to school, right? The child is still, engaging with the siblings and friends in school and still talking about friends. The child is not in a dangerous situation, right? The child is not going to be depressed, for example, right? So I think we need to look at all the other signs around, right? And we don't have to think that we must get it out of the child, because the child may not be ready to talk about it, because children process it differently as adults. So we can't be trying to measure it from an adult perspective, what we expect them to do grief work. We don't do that. Right? So for my own sons, I just was sensitive. And for example, I remember my younger one, the worst time for him is always in the shower, and he'll be crying in the shower. And talking about him like being 6-7 years old, right? Daddy died when he was 6, right? He will cry, and I said, "What happened, darling? I miss Daddy so much." I said, "Okay, yeah, you miss Daddy. So Mommy miss Daddy too." And so we just go into this, right? So in other words, I take it as it comes. If they express it, then I know I can then be with them, empathize with them, and then take on, "You missing Daddy? Your Mommy's missing Daddy too. Come, let me hug you. Yeah, I know you miss Daddy too." And then we just hug each other. So I often translate that for the other ladies, so that I said, don't be so anxious. Take the signs from the children. When they start asking you a question, that's the time that they're ready to listen.
Loss always leads to grief. Grief is an emotional response we feel, and each young person is going to feel when they have lost someone or something that means a lot to them. So we need to be able to help them facilitate their grieving process, help them understand the grief journey. And we can do that by saying, okay, this grief journey, just think of it as a street with bus stops along the way. Bus stop 1 is labeled denial and anger. Our first response to losing something or someone important to us is often denial. To not believe this is happening, along with doubting that it's true. We can feel angry about the loss, trying to find someone or something to blame, so we can aim our anger there. Sometimes we feel it's easier and safer to express anger than to express sorrow. So that's bus stop 1. It's a journey, okay? That journey will take them also, hopefully, eventually, they will move into, or they move into a bus stop 2, which is no hope. Eventually, our denial anger begins to fade, and we face the reality of the loss. We feel hopeless, as if nothing will ever be good again. And some people show the stage by actually crying, withdrawing, being depressed. They may not feel like taking care of themselves, even doing schoolwork or even their usual activities. They may resort to numbing the pain with activities that may harm themselves. Then there is, as part of this grief journey, bus stop 3. We get to that point of new beginnings, when we come to a place of resolution, recognizing things will actually never be the same, but we learn that we can live with loss. And we talk about our loss without that sharp pain that we felt when the loss was new. We accept that we can get these people, we accept we cannot get these people or the things back, and we can accept that this new normal is going to be a part of the losses that we face. We can even begin to dream again with new beginnings, to plan, to step forward, to meet goals, no matter how small that may be. No caveats though. There is in part of this grief journey, there is a grief street bypass. Sometimes people want to skip steps 1 or the stops, and they want to try to take a bypass directly to new beginnings. So from the loss, the trauma, they want to move straight to new beginnings. They don't allow themselves the time or space to be sad or angry about their loss. And there may be people in their life that actually tell them, and it's not helpful to tell them, please get over it. It's time, grow up, stop whining, get over it. It's not helpful. Or sometimes they hear in the church that they must praise God for everything. So if it's youth and they go into a youth service, you need to praise God for everything all the time. This bypass is not healthy, and they do need to go through the stages of grief and be able to deal honestly with their loss. You're going to find that this journey riding the bus is going to not be, this grief journey is not direct. And many times you're going to find that they may go back, 5 feelings going back to stage 1, bus stop 1, or they go back to bus stop 2. But over time, we are able to move forward again. And one day, hopefully, they'll be able to process towards and stay in this new beginnings situation. God does love us. God does care for us. But we helping that person also understand, even as adults find it hard to understand, that we do live in a fallen world, a world that is not perfect, a world that God created perfect, but because of the sin of the sin of Adam and Eve, we are where we are today. But it doesn't mean that God doesn't care, that God still creates everything intending for it to be beautiful, and it is beautiful. So I think for a younger child, if you're beginning this grieving process, for a younger child, it might help to facilitate the process by giving that child a flower. You hold a flower, you give that child a flower. We can name some of the flower is beautiful, it's created beautiful. We hold it in our hands. But we can also help the child to begin to identify some of the things that go on in this world that are not good, that are not happy events, that are painful. And as they identify, they pluck off one petal after another. Help them identify 1, 2, 3, 4 different things. And to say that therefore, this in the end, what you are holding, you pluck off those petals as you name them. Help the child. As the child names them, you pluck off the petal. But at the end, you're going to hold on to a flower that is actually unpetaled and destroyed because of what has happened. But for that child who's holding the flower that is not destroyed or damaged in any way, this is what God intended, always, a perfect creation. But things have happened that way. And help the child to understand that there is still, God still loves creation, God still loves the child, but that we live realistically in a world that is suffering, that is in pain. And things like that, therefore, happen.
For the longest time, we know that trauma in childhood is awful. Long-term studies show, of course, higher rates of all sorts of things. Physical illness, mental illness, bad relationships, academic failure. Poorer function, in life. But it also shows, as I said, sort of how people can, over time, be made more resilient. They can actually bounce back. They can come up, and there have been many instances, of course, of them triumphing, over adversity. They've turned it around. They've really almost, used it, to kind of bounce up higher. Of course, we're all familiar. We've all failed. And it's partly how we respond to it, that is important. We could respond to it very negatively, and it overwhelms us and it crushes us. On the other hand, we can use it, sort of as a means of growth, and so yes, I mean, science shows very much, that even, the children who have been badly abused, later on adopted into very good, loving, caring families, how it transforms the lives, sort of, you can compare it, there are ample twin studies, of twins raised in different environments, different households, to show the power, of how a positive environment, positive care, the difference it makes. And it's you can't underestimate it, the more you sow positively, great things would happen. And, I think, and that's the hope. We don't live, sort of in this hopelessness where just because one trauma, terrible as it may be, has happened, that's it, that's a be all and end all, that defines us. It doesn't, sort of things that we do and things that other people do can very much change the whole trajectory